This is Tim Albright with AVNation, celebrating Black History Month, talking about the Black experience within the AV industry. And with me is my very good friend, Alesia Hendley. Welcome, ma'am.
What's happening, Tim? Happy to be back.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You know her as Smooth Factor, but she also works for a good buddy of mine, Guy Feiner, over at Access Networks. Before that, you were an end user, tech manager. You've had various number of just different entries into the industry. So just in general, how did you get involved? How did you get into the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I was in AV all my life and didn't know that I was in AV. It started, with me and my dad just messing around with some soundboards. He was trying to get his church up and running. And next thing I knew, I was so into audio. That was like my first love behind basketball at that time. And kind of just ran with it. He taught me the ropes. He was an audio engineer before he became a pastor within a church. So once he can no longer fill that role, couldn't preach and run audio. So I kind of stepped up, learned at a pretty young age, and we took that show on the road. And it led to building really great experiences in the house of worship. And when we moved from our original state down south to Texas, he did start a church there. We were up and running, but also I got into consulting within houses of worship because other churches saw what we were doing and kind of wanted to take that and incorporate it within their own spaces. But they were running into the issue of only having volunteers, not necessarily people that were trained. So I did consulting within house of worship and stayed with my dad's church. From there, I actually had to go to school because people were like, "Oh, where did you go to school?" And I was like, "I didn't go to school." Like, what's school? So I ended up going to a trade school there in Houston, Texas, called Media Tech. It was very intuitive, but it was also very based off of studio work. So I kind of had to pivot a little bit, and I always knew that live sound was my thing. I got the goosebumps every time I stepped behind a board. But with school, you had to find artists to record to kind of get your grade. So then I started building out a label, a publishing company. And then I realized I was more into it than a lot of artists. And I was an audio engineer with no artist to record. And I was like, well, what can I do with this? Use the power of the internet, get on Indeed and stuff like that. And then this was where I kind of found the more traditional sense of AV because I got into working with AV companies that were in hotels. And I was like, okay. And then we were doing a lot of corporate settings. And I was like, there's a whole industry of this. And then that led me to the Berry Center, where I was a part of that in-house AV team there in Texas. And that was just an experience unlike any other because that multi-purpose facility really opened some doors for me, being able to work with so many different systems and so many different venues under one roof. And that's really where it took off. So I kind of leveraged what I was doing there, started blogging and vlogging and all that stuff. And, using my technical chops and balancing out with the social networking and kind of just continuing to climb the ladder to where I am now at Access Networks as a sales engineer.
To talk about the Berry Center for a second, because you mentioned the fact that there's so many venues and so many different experiences under one roof. For somebody who's never been really a tech manager or worked with facilities and worked with, the type of multi-purpose center, what does that mean? That it's so many different, what is it? How many are we talking about? And what are the different types of systems did you help both, maintain, design, but also upkeep?
Yeah, so that space was really fun because before I moved down to Texas, I had no idea high school football could be as big as what it was. And so it's like you walk into this huge space that, is built and owned by a school district for every school to come in and do their school plays, whether it was play football or, graduations or proms. So you had this one space that had a large conference center, a theater, an arena, and then the stadium. And being a part of these systems and trying to connect all these spaces so all of our team could kind of run cohesively was a huge challenge because that's where I found out about Dante. That's when all of our digital signage started being connected over the network. And, so it was really, it was fun, it was challenging, and it was engaging because a lot of our gear was transitioning from analog to digital. And we had to make all of these individual spaces live together and create different experiences all at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to walk you through a couple of things. You mentioned the social media and the blogging. When you first started hitting the social media and you first started hitting the blogging arena, did you have a sense of what you would accomplish there? Did you have a sense of connecting with as many people as you have so far?
So I technically was already doing it just in another space, because when I was really into the music scene, that's how I got involved and became a manager, getting involved with music events and being brand ambassador for music festivals. So I was like, okay, this is really no different. When I found, Chris Neto and AV Twiggy and you, I was like, okay, this is no different, just another
Yeah.
community. But the blogging is what changed it for me because I wasn't doing that. I wasn't doing that beforehand. So I was like, okay, Tim's got a site. Maybe I could write for him. And that was my first blog. And then it kind of, Sound Girls saw what we were doing. Then I started writing for Sound Girls. But at first, no, I did not know where it was going. It was like, okay, let's see what's happening. Like I'm doing really cool things. And I just want to show people like, hey, you can get into audio, whether it's from broadcasting or running theater, or even in a conference center in a more corporate setting. So I had kind of set out to highlight what I was doing, but I didn't know what all was going to come with it. I was like, we'll see what happens. And I'm glad I did. I'm glad I did because I don't have a writer's background. So I had to link, I had to link with you guys and get the editing and all of that stuff to make it what it was. But I'm glad I took the risk and kept highlighting what I was doing.
I am too. I am too. So let's talk about some of the hurdles that you've kind of overcome and the areas that you kind of faced. Um, Common questions that we're asking this month. You're a black woman in a predominantly white male industry, right? What are some of the things and some of the things that you've faced, and how have you overcome some of those hurdles?
I read this question over and over and over again too. I'm not gonna lie to you because I was like, how do I even answer this, right? Because like we kind of briefly discussed before we hit record, like I used to shy away from these conversations, simply because I'm almost every point of diversity. I'm in a lot of these points of diversity, so I've never um, approached a single one. I've just constantly fought adversity. So, I mean, I can tell you stories of me going in and programming a system, like from top to bottom, actually installing it and setting it up for an event and not being able to work it because I don't look the part. I had to hand over the system to the white guy, because he looked the part for that event. I've been let go from some churches once they found out about my sexuality. I have, like it's a constant struggle, but I think my superpower is I'm super resilient. And I think that's everybody in our community. The Black culture is super resilient. Like if you look at your favorite athletes, most of them, Michael Jordan all the way to Muhammad Ali, like they just never quit. And that's part of our culture. We never quit. So of course I faced a lot of challenges. I could have looked at them as, oh, you're discriminating me, or I could have taken that to heart. And at some points I did. I would go home and cry. But tomorrow's a new day. And I tweet that quite a lot, like new day, new opportunities. Let's start over. Let's go get it. And that's always been my perspective with anything.
When you're talking with young people, and not that you're old by any stretch of the imagination, but you have been in the industry for a minute, so there are people younger than you coming up behind you. What kind of advice do you give them? When it comes to either whether it's a person of color, it's a LGBT, or anybody who is facing um, discrimination.
Yeah.
How would you advise them as they enter this industry um, to not just to overcome, but to thrive in this industry?
For sure, you can't give up. Yeah, it's okay to be hurt. It's okay to be upset because I find myself being angry, and that's why I don't have these conversations, right? Because I've had a hard time over the years controlling my anger or my emotions, and I always find myself trying not to be that angry Black woman or stereotype that comes with that. So I always tell people to check your emotions at the door. Like things are going to happen. Our world has improved, but not that much. So be ready to face it. be ready to go home, check yourself, and come back and prove yourself 10 times better, right? Yeah, I had to go in and set everything up and hand it over to somebody who looked the part, but eventually they tell on themselves. Like he didn't have my experience. He didn't know how to operate it once it was set up. So it's like you're constantly trying to prove yourself, but don't look at it that way. Look at you bettering yourself and just keep going. Like stay resilient, stay gritty, and just keep scrapping because um, there are Tims. There's a Tim out there that'll give you an opportunity to do something that'll change your life.
As we wrap up here, I mentioned the fact that you are not that old, so you've got a number of years ahead of you before you retire. But when you do, when Alesia Hendley hangs it up, and you look back on your career and you look back on the industry, what do you want to see have changed in the industry, and what hand do you want to have in it?
I was talking with Alexis Labore about this, and I was like, I didn't used to believe this phrase: "If they can't see you, they can't be you." Right? I did not believe that because there was plenty of times where I saw no one who looked like me until I met Charmaine and Alexis, and I was like, "Oh snap!" There are people in executive roles, doing amazing things. I can be an executive before the age of 35 or 40. So I kind of set a personal goal for myself. But um, in the bigger scope of things, I just want to inspire, right? Somebody sees me on this podcast and they look like me, then boom, I've done my job. I've accomplished something here on earth, and I really just want to inspire. And show other people that you can do it, because audio put me in the game, but audio was just like a foot in the door. There's so many other things that you can follow behind audio, and it's kind of like the more you know, the more you grow. So I just want to be an example and show people that you don't have to be in a studio, you don't have to be in TV, you don't have to be in corporate. Just follow whatever your dream is, and let's keep going. I just want to inspire.
All right. Before I let you go, if you follow Alesia Hendley, and you should, on social media, at least once a day, she will make the comment of you have to rise and grind.
Let's go.
If someone if they've followed you but don't know exactly what that means, I'm going to give you the time right here to explain rise and grind.
So a lot of people actually thought that was like my thing. And then I'm like, no, that's a part of Black culture. Like that is something that you would see Puff Daddy or Diddy was saying back in the day in like 95, and then Mr. John, he dropped his book, Rise and Grind. Like that is legit a part of the culture. It's not necessarily doing something that you don't want to do, but it's the fact that you get up every day and you take one step closer to where you ultimately want to be. So that's what I get up and do every day. If I could just do one single thing each day that gets me closer to a goal, then I'm good. So that's really what Rise and Grind means to me. I used to be one of those people that was like team no sleep, and that wasn't working. So I was like, yo, let's just get up and get to it and make it happen. So that's what Rise and Grind is all about. I didn't create that. It was just something that I personally was tweeting every day to motivate myself. And then people were like, catching on to it. And I was like, okay, this is helping other people. So let's just keep the ball rolling, because it's never about us. Everything is about people, whether you're in sales, technology, it's all about people. So rise and grind.
Rise and grind. All right, Alesia Hendley, thank you so much, ma'am. And thank you I virtually met you way before I ever met you in person, and was so incredibly thrilled to meet you in person. So very glad to know you and be a friend. How do people connect with you if they haven't already?
At the Smooth Factor on every platform except like Snapchat and TikTok. Don't tell Megan I said that, because she hates that I am not on TikTok. But
how are you not on TikTok?
I don't know.
Megan's on Megan Dutta is from SCN. How are you? She's on TikTok. You're not.
I can't get with the TikTok. I mean, I basically watch it on Instagram anyways, because now they have Reels and everybody puts their TikToks there. But yeah, I don't have a TikTok or a Snapchat, but at the Smooth Factor on every platform, and of course, thesmoothfactor.com.
All right, very good. Alesia Hendley, thank you so much. For AVNation, you can go by our website, AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. You will find interviews like this all the month of February celebrating Black history. All that and more at AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv.